the year now, the 6th of Shvat. This week marks the Hilula, really famous Kabbalist, the huge rabbi in Israel. His name was Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera, Zecher Tzadik Lebracha, very good rabbi of his time. Much can be said in regards to him. He was the author of a great Torah colossal work called the Toldot Yitzhak. This happens to be a great work that we've spoken about on various occasions before in this series, and that much can be said in regards to him here as we are in the week of his Hilula. So very, very interesting. So let's explore a few of the highlights of the famous rabbi's life. Now, as for before, 6th Shvat marks his Hilula. He's buried in Israel. And I believe we've spoken about other great rabbis, I think his family. It's interesting, his father was also a great Kabbalist. His father's name was Rav Aaron Eliyahu Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe, who was a very, very good rabbi. I think he was author of the Megillah Kodesh B'Gdei Isha, very, very great rabbi of his time. Rabbi, I think we spoke about various occasions before inside the series. That's something I would have to point out over here. The family name פירירא was a very, very common last name, its time in those specific facilities. So what's interesting, just to say about it, I think the National Library of Israel, they actually have his father's books, a whole library of collection of various manuscripts and writings with regards to him. And this whole, if you go on his website itself, you will see that I think some of the teachings, I think he featured various different languages also, if I'm not mistaken. But he was his father was also a very good rabbi, so that's something I very much have to point out here from the outset. Okay, so we're here to speak about Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe over here today. He also had very famous, I think his grandfather's name from his father's side was Rabbi Yitzhak, happily enough. His daughter's name was Hannah, or Frala, if I'm not mistaken, and her husband was Rav Nissim ben Yamin. Let's speak about his son-in-law over here, because he's a key figure in Jewish history. That's something we very much have to point out. Who was Rav Nissim or Hannah over here? He lived between 1881 to 1962. Remember, he is Chatan of Rabbi Perera, who we're speaking together. He was, I believe, a deputy head rabbi in Egypt. He was a chief rabbi in Gaza, famously in himself, I think also in Haifa, and had various important positions, let's just say, in himself. I think he was actually born in Medaya in Algeria, if I'm not mistaken. His father, Rav Nissim Ochana's father, happened to be a famous Kabbalist, someone named Rav Masud Gad Ochana, who was, I think, a descendant of another famous great rabbi I think we've spoken about here in this series, Rav Suleiman Ochana, who was himself happens to have been famous Kabbalist. He was, as it says, המקובל שנמנה עם גורי הארי, נחשב לשני מעלה אחרי רבי חיים ויטל. Very, very interesting itself. You can see the greatness of art. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Rav Nissim Ochana היה ידוע באהבתו לציון. I think in 1886, he moved to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel. בהיות בנו ניסים בן 4 ומשפחה השתקע בירושלים. I think they would actually settle in Jerusalem when he was 18 years of age, if I'm not mistaken. He would learn in yeshiva, and at 21 he was ordained to the rabbinate through another great rabbi who we mentioned about various occasions for him, Rabbi Yaakov Shaul Elisha. Remember, he was a chief rabbi of Rishon LeZion here in Israel. There was another great rabbi from the Elisha family, Rabbi Chaim Moshe Elisha, another great rabbi. I think he was also a chief rabbi, if I'm not mistaken. Also, Rav Shmuel Salent. Who was Rav Shmuel Salent? He happened to have been I think a head rabbi in Ashkenazi community, in Ashkenazi Jewry, especially in Jerusalem. When Rav Nissim Ochana was 22 years of age, he got married to Miriam, if I'm not mistaken, and she was the daughter of Rabbi Nachman Batito, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very interesting enough. And very much interesting enough. Just to point out that I think in 1907 he will become the rabbi of Gaza, especially for 5 years. Interesting enough. And I think he was close to Rabbi Yaakov Meir, who would go on to be a chief rabbi over there. He would do huge amounts, I think, in there at that stage of time. That's something that we have to very much point out. I think, we have to point out over here in Gaza, he would do various different happenings. I think in 1912, it says in B'Shnat 1912, he would return to Jerusalem. And I think sadly his first wife, Rabbi Miriam, passed away, it's reported available. Otoshana Lachashit Chaten Bishnia im Prala Perera. So very interesting. We're speaking over here about his father-in-law in this specific special edition of the Mukubal, the great Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera. So Rabbi Nissim Ochana would get married after his first wife passed away now to the daughter of Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera. And I think Avar Harav Ochana to New York, if I'm not mistaken. Very, very interesting enough. They would make this move to America. I think they'll be connected very much to the Aleppo community over there. I think he would learn that and be part of that for 2 years. I think this time period of the First World War, I think it will be stationed in Jerusalem. עקב נתינתו הצרפתית, סולטנית האימפרית העות'מאנית שלחמה בצרפת, מנעו ממנו לצאת משפטה האימפריה. ובמקום זאת הגלו אותו לאלכסנדרה במצרים. I think they would actually end up just like various other Jews also in Egypt, if I'm not mistaken, Alexandria. לאחר חצי שנה, after half year, מינה אותו הרב הראשי של Alexandria. I think he'd be appointed a chief rabbi in Alexandria. Rav Nissim Ochana, remember he's the son-in-law of Rav Perera here. Rav Rashi shel Malta, he will also be connected very much to the chief rabbinate of Malta. Sham kien chamesh shanim, so very interesting enough. So you can see his Chatan Rav Nissim Ochana, this is his daughter's husband, the important positions he had globally at that point in time. Very, very important positions. And I think in 1920, Huzman Arab Ochana al Yedei Harab Chaim Elisha, Yot Arab Rashi Shel Port Said, will be appointed in this prominent position. Let's say this is more the northern part of Egypt in itself. Harab Ochana Na'ana Latzia Port Said, who bits to Rabbi Yasad et Beit Sefer Ha'avri. Zichron Moshe, I think, will be set up over there. And it's interesting, Chaim Weizmann, the famous Zionist, who's immediately wrote at Evan Pina Shel Beit Sefer Zeh, בזמן שאותו במצרים, השתתף הרב אוחנה במסיבת שערך in the year 1924, מלך מצרים, פואד הראשון, and I think in 1935 he was appointed, if I'm not mistaken, head of Jewish court in Cairo and a deputy chief rabbi in Egypt. הרב אוחנה פעל למען הפצת הציונית בקהילתו. He was very much involved with Zionistic activity over there. עודד את היהודים במצרים לעלות לארץ ישראל וסייע לעלייה. הטיף לחינוך דתי-לאומי והיה מזוהה עם המזרחי. I think he was involved with the Mizrahi in of itself. פיקח על לימוד השפה העברית בבתי ספר, נתן שיעורים בתלמוד בישיבה. So he would actually give over various shiurim inside that. I think in 1947, Rav Nissim Ochana, the Hatan of Rav Perera, was appointed to be the head of Jewish court and a head rabbi, if I'm not mistaken, of the Sephardic community in Haifa. Very prominent position over there. באותה שנה אמר דברי זיכרון הצדוק לסמונה שנהרג בעת שניסה למנוע שוד. ודבריו צוטטו בעיתון דבר. I think in July 1947 he החליף את הרב ברוך מרקוס ונעתה לבקשת הבריטים לבקר אצל עולי הגרדים. If I'm not mistaken, Baruch Marcus, I think it was a chief rabbi, the first one of the city of Haifa, if I'm not mistaken, and took on various different positions, I should say, at that point in time. That's something we have to point out. ביקר את חברי האצ"ל, יעקב וייס, אבשלום חביב מאיר נקל, if I'm not mistaken. It was very much connected to many people at that point in time. ערב עליית לגרדום, אמר, yes, so there's a whole thing. היה חלוץ מתרגמי התלמוד בבלי לעברית, ותרגמו הודפסו ספרים על 3 מסכתות. I think in the year Tafshin Chaf Aleph, if I'm not mistaken, he gave a חתם על מכתב רבני, מברך את הפועל המזרחי על פועלתו בחיזוק היהודית ולהתיישבות הדתית לרגל חגיגית 40 שנים לייסדו. I think it was on the 40th year when it was actually formed in itself. I think in 1962 on the 24th of Adar Bet, he passed away. Rabbi Nissim Benjamin Ochana did. He was 80 years of age, and he was laid to rest in Haifa. And I think there's actually a road actually named after him in Haifa itself. He was author of great Torah works, including Torat Emet, the Tshuva Kalacha, the Targum Mesachtot Min HaTalmud, Hababli Le'Brit, Da'ma Shetashib Le'Rukos, Safa Na'am, Torat Zahav Sefer, Taryag Mitzvot, V'Yochoch Im Ha'Iroksid. You can see over here really great books in himself. He's very well decorated. And remember, he was a Chatan over here of Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera, who we happen to be speaking about over here today. Very, very interesting. Now, for anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community as we're exploring a few of the highlights of famous rabbis' life over here. Rabbi was talking about before, Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera, who was a great Kabbalist of his time. Yeah, so very, very interesting. I think his grandfather, as we said before, from his father's side, was Rabbi Yitzhak. Yeah, so much can actually be given, as said over here, friends. And yeah, we are a community, friends, so welcome anyone if you are just joined to our community, and really appreciate all the fantastic feedback that everyone is giving us constantly basis. It's really, really just heartwarming to hear the great feedback over there. So that was his son-in-law, happened to be Rav Nissim O'Connor. So remember, he passed away in 1962 over there. That's something that we have to point out with regards to him. I believe that his father-in-law passed away around the time period of 1917, but I'll have to double check that over here. Okay, so let's explore a bit more with regards to him. I think in the year Fresh Chet, he would actually make Aliyah with his father. He was just born, to clarify, in Greece, in Thessaloniki, and Heta Fresh Chet, he would make Aliyah to Eretz Israel and would learn in the famous Beit Midrash Bet El in Jerusalem. Very interesting. Now, Kol Erev Hayad Doresh B'Shivat Baalei Batim Be'eh Ha'etika. He would actually give over a Torah classes to Bali Batim over there. V'chibed Tefillot Lomar B'Makomot HaKadoshim. Various different specific prayers in holy places for people to say in of itself. So that's very much we have to point out over here, friends. What's a Beit Midrash? Bet El is probably one that, let's say, the bastion of yeshivot, even in that entire Israel over here, which is very, very staggering. Let's just point out, we have to point out over here, within regards to the greatness and high caliber of many of the great rabbis. And anyone tuning in live, and once again, welcome to our community as we are exploring the life and a few of the highlights of very, very famous rabbi over here of yesteryear. So if you're new over here, welcome, and yeah, we hope we can be a good shliach over here within the education realm. So we're speaking about a great Kabbalist over here. We can point out more. So he was part of Beit Midrash Bet El in Jerusalem, which is a place we visited, I believe, here on this channel on various occasions before. Yeah, Bet El Yeshiva happens to be, yeah, let's explore that with regards to this Talmudic academy, or I think it's also known as Yeshivat HaMekubal, the school of the devout, and they teach Kabbalah. It's a center of Kabbalah, and I think it's in Rumah neighborhood of West Jerusalem. It's built in 1948, a new one in of itself, and another is in Old City's Jewish Quarter, which was built in the year 1974. Let's explore a bit with regards to the history of the Yeshivat Bet El, which he very much was a part of. The Bet El Yeshiva itself was opened in the year 1737 by Rabbi Gedalia Hayon. I think he actually happened to be from Constantinople. And the sole purpose, or the main purpose, was to study Kabbalah in the Holy City. I think in the 1740s, it was various different gifted great rabbis, including the famous Rabbi Shalom Mizrahi Shrabi, who would arrive in Jerusalem from Yemen. He would study at Bet El, and over time he became an outstanding scholar and Kabbalist. And at the behest of Rabbi Hayon, he was appointed the head of yeshiva. Under Rabbi Shrabi's leadership, the yeshiva would grow into one of the main yeshivot with 40 scholars from a mix of Sephardic and Ashkenazic, let's just say, communities. Rabbi Hayon organized a life of yeshiva around prayer services, which, through mystical communion, let's just say, with God, would bring the scholars closer to the understanding of various different Kabbalistic teachings. I think Rabbi Shrabi initiated regulations, let's say orders and kavanot. In itself, kavanot means intentions of daily prayers, according to the Nahar Shalom prayer book, which was, I think, printed in Thessaloniki, if I'm not mistaken, way back. I think possibly even in the year 1806 which he authored. He would continue the teachings of the Arizal and followed its cosmological approach, which in incorporating, let's say, various different symbols of Kabbalah in treaties and meditations. Let's just say it's actually known as the famous Siddur Harashash. It will remain together with Etz Chaim, the great book of Rav Chaim Vital, a focus on Kabbalistic studies inside yeshiva. Very, very interesting. This group in the Yeshiva Bet El was very famous. I think it was divided into 4 groups, and they would get up at different times of the day, especially for Tikkun Chazot, was one of them, where they would do very, very high level learning, especially of Kabbalah, of the Arizal, his teachings. The second would also delve into works of the Arizal, I think from after Shacharit, if I'm not mistaken. The third group will learn Mishnah, with Rabbi Ovadia Mibar commentary from midday till nightfall, after Arvit, if I'm not mistaken. The fourth set of scholars would read and learn the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch. So that's very, very interesting. I think in just going back to the yeshiva, it's a bit of history with regards to it. Rav Shalom Shrabi would choose 12 select disciples, which were to form a special group called the Ahavat Shalom. It's a key group in itself of this yeshiva, and they would sign a pledge of external friendship, which hung on the door of the Holy Ark inside the yeshiva. And I think, very, very interesting. The yeshiva, I think, premises in the hands of leading Kabbalists of each generation who inherited the apartment on the top floor. Very interesting enough. Another feedback, I think in the late 1800s, the writings of Dr. Eliezer Levi, let's say, would escort Sir Moses Montefiore around Jerusalem. He would describe how they visited the place where they pray all year round, and according to the mystical meanings of the Aries, from midnight till the afternoon, and from then on the evening they shall study, let's say, Talmud and Zohar. Very, very interesting enough. So much more can be said within regards to this community. I think in 1928, eventually, the Bet El Yeshiva will get a new building, if I'm not mistaken. I think there was sadly a Jericho earthquake in 1927. In the 1930s, the illustrious Chazon Ish was on his way to Kotel. He made a point of stopping by the yeshiva to study there, stating, "I have great merit to see the place." Well, let's say, such great and holy people learned and prayed. And I think during the 1947-1949 Palestinian war, the contents of the building were looted and the building was desecrated. And very, very sadly, so that's something else that we have to point out with regards to this. This was just talking a bit about the famous Yeshivat Bet El over here, because we happen to be speaking about one of the rabbis that would very much learn from there, the famous rabbi, Kabbalist, Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera. We're just going to take a short 1-minute break of this, so please, in the meantime, while you're waiting, subscribe to the channel and join our community, and we'll be back in 1 minute, friends, over here. Hi, shalom everyone, thanks for being patient over here as we are exploring the life within regards to famous Kabbalist from the Yeshiva Bet El. He was very much part of from Salonika, המקובל, Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera, who is speaking about today. So we're just speaking a minute within regards to famous Bet El Yeshiva in of itself, that we were talking about how the let's just say, will blossom in the new city in 1948 and go back to the old city in 1974, and the great rabbis, especially the son of Rabbi Shalom Hadaya, for example, was the head of Yeshivat Bet El at one point in time. It was under leadership of Rabbi Yedidia Raphael Chai Abu Lafi and Rabbi Masud El Haddad. Rabbi Obadia Hodaya would very much be over there, and then how the yeshiva will actually progress at various different points in time. And I think even interesting enough, one of the alumni of the yeshiva was famous Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, if I'm not mistaken, who passed away. It's his Silula, I think, around this time period also. And very, very much interesting. I think there'll be a Rosh Yeshiva in the year who would pass away in 2010, Rabbi Shalom Mordechai Chai Hedaya, if I'm not mistaken. So that's very, very interesting. So much can be said within regards to famous Yeshivat Bet El. Hopefully we'll be able to do a tour inside that specific place at that point in time. But what's interesting is, what is key over there, the great Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera, who we're speaking about today, would actually learn inside that Beit Midrash of the famous Bastion Yeshiva of Bet El. Kol erev haya doresh b'yeshiva ba'alei batim be'ira itika v'chibet v'lo lomar b'makomot ha'kedoshim. Very interesting enough. Every evening he would educate, let's say, the ba'alei batim, the people that would come in there, the workers, let's just say, in of itself, and would educate them within regards to Torah. Noda kumumcha b'ktivat kumiyot. He was known as an expert when it came to writing amulets. Hotzi le'or et hasefer mi'il kodesh u'bigdei isha shektav aviv im biurim mishelo. I think his father would actually write many teachings within regards to this, and there'll be expoundations actually put in within regards to that. So I believe he passed away in the year Hitafresh Ayin Zayin. Interesting enough. So as we stated before, I believe that was around the time of 1917. He passed away. I'm not too sure his exact age, how old he was over there. But you can see what a great rabbi he happened to be. And one of the outstanding books of his was Todot Yitzchak, something that we very much have to point about. I believe he was buried in Har Hazeitim, Mount of Olives burial plot, but we can explore a bit more within regards to him over here inside this series. Now, anyone tuning in live at the moment, welcome to our community as we're exploring a few of the highlights of the great rabbi. Happened to be one of the very, very famous chief, head rabbis in itself, part of the famous Yeshivat Bet El, and so forth, which is something that we much have to point out. This, if anyone is new over here to our community, please don't forget to subscribe at the moment, and join and educate and learn much, much more. Now, I think there's a lot chronicled over in various different online libraries, especially, I believe, in the National Library of Israel website over there, which I very much recommend. I can actually see, I think it's manuscript at the moment we speak, which is very, very interesting over here. And much more can be said. Rabbi Aaron Perera, he was also, as we said before, was very, very much a great rabbi of his time, rabbi that we spoke about here on various occasions before here inside this series. Now, I'm just looking at the moment, as we said before, his father was Rabbi Aaron, if I'm not mistaken. I think there'll be great works. We said Mila Kodosh and the Bigdei Yesha, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he would actually possess. So that's something very, very important to state over. I think even in some auctioning websites, it could be that they've got these books on hand. Something that we have to point out over here. Friends, that anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. And we're always looking to learn more. So I think Rabbi Aaron, his father, was also a great, let's just say, scholar in of itself, if I'm not mistaken. I think his book or his work was written actually back in the year 1870. Let's point out there. Kibur Kabbalah. בעומק התורה הקדושה למען תלמידי רב המתחילים להיכנס בפרדס החוכמה. מאת רבי אהרון רפאל חיים פררה, referring to his father in Jerusalem, דפוס, in the year 1870. מהודורה ראשונה של הספר של המחבר שהיה מגדולי מקובלי ירושלים. מעבר לשעה, תפילה על הפרנסה ופרשת המן, עם תרגום אונקלוס, לאחר כן פוסק. and I think it was in September, he wrote Chomet Devorat Sh'am Yuchad, if I'm not mistaken. Lefiv Shirona Halevi, Hasfarim Ha'ibrim Shenitfasu B'Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Tavshin Chaf Gimel. I think Amud Shivim, Mispar 140, נוספו לספר דפים שנתפסו לאחר כ-20 שנה מתחילה ההדפסה. דפים אלה, השער הראשון, והדף שלה, so it's just naming about the, let's just say, just a side topic, which is not necessarily so really relevant over here for all of us to know. But yeah, it's actually just adding over here. המקובל הלוקה רבי רפאל חיים משה Perera, who had a specific nickname over there. Nolad, he was actually born in Saloniki, as we said before. Rabbi Yitzhak Perera was his father. In Tafresh Chet, I think he would go together with his son. I'll say it now, but not Tafresh Shin Chet. Remember, we're speaking over here about the father of the great rabbi. I think he would go together with Yachad in Bnei Beito Yerushalayim Umiyad Nimna Ben Chachmei HaMukbalim, who would be assured to become one of the, let's say, signings as a Chacham Mukubal V'Yachidei Ge'eg Bet El V'Chachmei Chesed Kel Hu Noda Ke'achad Umiyuchad Ben Mekublei Doro. Yeah, so very, very interesting. חיבר את הספר הקבלי, תולדות אהרון ומשה ואפי יצחק, if I'm not mistaken, it's from תפרש למד, דבר השם ירושלים, תפרש למד גמל. ואחריו פטירתו הדפיס בנו המקובל, רבי יצחק פררה, את ספר הקבלי מעיל קדש ובגדי ישע, מנהגות שכתוב אבל על גיליונות ספרי קבלה של מעלה. Yes, it goes on over here, just stating on a bit of history within Al-Rasim, but you can actually see the preface of the book itself, respectively, looks like a very important Torah colossal work over here. So that's something very much we have to point out. Over here, so that's Rabbi and Raphael Chaim Moshe Perera. If I'm not mistaken, we went on a bit of a tangent within regards to speaking. Now, anyone tuning in live over here, welcome to our community as we're exploring a few of the highlights of the great Kabbalist. His name is Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera. If I'm not mistaken, yes, so he wrote these two important books, Toldot Yitzhak, very, very important, let's just say, Torah, colossal work in of his own right. And many of the famous rabbis that we're speaking of yesteryear wrote very important works. It's something I would actually point out over here just from the outset. So how important it is to learn, to educate, and so on and so forth over there. So he was an integral part of the old Yeshivat Bet El. So that's another added thing to talk about. Now, friends, over here we've already recorded about nearly 1,400 videos plus within regards to great Chachamim of yesteryear. There's something first of all we have to very much point out over here within regards to various informations over here. And very interesting. Now, on this channel, friends, we don't just record video biography videos of great rabbis of yesteryear. That's just one thing that we do. We try to explore various different parts of the archaeological Eretz Israel. We try and go around pretty much everywhere. So that is phenomenal. And also we do tours all over Israel, which I feel obviously is very important. And we explore just inside this vicinity. We don't like to go out too much. Also, that's something I very much have to point out. And just appreciating being alive and breathing and so on and so forth over there. The pointness and the importance within regards to it is absolutely, let's just say, invaluable. And advice also, that's something very much we have to point out over here. Now, friends, over here in our community, wishing you all a fantastic day. And we really appreciate any of the feedback you guys are giving, even if we happens to be a bit of a distance, but Bez Roshem, we just hope good things. Over here, so that's very interesting. As we explore a few of the highlights of the great rabbi's life over here. And if you want to know more information about them, please don't forget to, and don't hesitate to send an email, more information on what can do if you want any information on what we said about here in this series within regards to the Serbian Sarajevo Jewish community over here. We've been speaking about that quite recently. Hopefully today, just to clarify, we've been speaking about a very great rabbi in today's special, in the Kabbalist Rabbi Yitzhak Moshe Perera, who happens to be the 6th of Shvat, which happened to be this week. He's buried in Eretz Israel over here, and I think the Me'el Kodesh and the Bigdei Yashar will happen to be great books, if I'm not mistaken. So, wishing everyone well at the moment, and take care and have a good night. And please don't forget, if you're new here, subscribe to the channel.